I would now like to ask Dasa, who is from the CEE Gender Network and from the European Forum for Democracy and Solidarity, and has been and is still one of an expert in development and has worked at the United Nations. But you will do a bit, what is the impact for the populations in the countries? And please, Dasa, it's up to you.
Very much. First, let me congratulate you, Ernst personally, and Massimo and the team. It's great to see how the stimulating discussions are developing and how the FEPS is contributing to that. Second, it's great to speak after Jan Marinus, who's actually spelled it out, and therefore I can do it telegraphically. Yesterday, I think we missed one thing which came out this morning, I think in Laszlo's presentation, is that there is a reason why we have gone to soft power. We've had a bloody past, we've learned the lesson, and there are these lessons that, of course, is not an either-or choice, but however, I think we should be proud of those lessons and that we have internalized, and that is something we might want to think about when we look at the Western Balkans. What is happening is that with the EU, with the entire enlargement and accession and the acquis and so on, we are actually working on technocratic solutions. But we need also political and educational measures so that we bring these populations and these countries up to par in terms of the values and the principles that we are standing for. And we may have a gap, and you can see that in the electorate, between the aspirations to join and the level of understanding of what democracy, what accountability, what transparency and anti-corruption and so on means in that context. So we are battling with that. Second, let me just tell you, just put myself in parameters. The first lens that I am going to speak from is that question of the status of women and gender equality, which is a litmus test for the state of democracy and human rights in every society. Today, when you very often speak to the ordinary person, both women and men, and you say, well, I'm a feminist, what happens, they say, oh, sorry, are you lesbian? You know, I have to say this because the confusion in minds of people is enormous. So the 18-year-olds who went through the entire process are not up to par. And that is where, hopefully, a lot of the integration, particularly in the educational systems, is going to, in the next generations, bring to that. We discussed yesterday the austerity programs. I will not go on into the details on how it affects gender equality and so on. But how many crises and how many belt tightenings can the population of a number of these countries go through? The two Laszlos here know better than I do. It's 4 or 5 belt tightenings and social cuts and so on. The medicine that was applied in Hungary or in the region. So how far can you go? We are living, the Chinese proverb is, I wish you were to live in interesting times. We're basically living in something which, you know, we had the post-industrial, the post-technological, now we have the post-internet period. We have the post-Cold War, the hangover is finished. We have to sober up. And therefore, it's in the times of crisis, it's actually looking forward. It's not looking inside. And the solutions have to be innovative. Now, what are the 3 lessons? One, and of course, what I'm saying is a bit of a tension, and I think Pia yesterday got the tension right. It's the tension between the realpolitik of it and the vision of it. It's, you know, how do you bring these two, and that's where the art of politicians is, bringing the realpolitik and so on. So 3 only questions. The first one is, we've learned from the Balkans, or from Western Balkans, whatever you want to call it, Southeastern Europe, that decisiveness, timing of intervention, political will is important, and that complacency and dragging our feet doesn't get us anywhere. In 1988, There are two examples. One is the former Yugoslav Prime Minister asked for 400 million Deutschmarks from the European Union. That was when the currency for the first time became convertible, when they were acceding to the EU, and was not given the money. Would it have helped? I don't know. But that was an attempt. So let's not drag our feet. There was all this back and forth with Brussels and all this troikas and so on, and it didn't work. So decisiveness and political will is, complacency is a problem. Jan Marinus now mentioned the question of the new Serbian president, right? And we have also a president of the UN General Assembly just now elected who's very tough on Kosovo. If you look at the structure of the politicians at this point, these are ex-Milosevic politicians. So are we going to be complacent? How are we going to deal with that reality? I think Laszlo now mentioned the question of racism, but we are seeing a rise of xenophobia. We've had nationalism, of course, for the last 20 years in former Yugoslavia, but we're also seeing the rise of neo-fascism. In the bookstores at one point in Zagreb, you had Mein Kampf. You can't have it in Berlin or you know, I'm sorry, and nobody realized that it shouldn't be there. You know, it's the, what is it, the First Amendment, the right to speak or the right to express. I'm sorry, we cannot allow it in Europe today because we've also learned that lesson. So let's learn the lesson and then go back and try to make some change out there. And finally, internal party democracy. Corruption is endemic in these countries. It's not, you know, the big corruption we see, we know it comes out. But, you know, the everyday life is tough. People have to get health care and education and so on and so forth, and these are small sums that are changing hands. So how do you change the culture, the accountability and the transparency around that? And that is going to, and that affects also the question of internal party democracy and the accountability of party leaders. We have worked with Pia, for instance, on this quota for women, and it worked when we spoke with the party leaders, but they have to be responsible for the image they are projecting, and that's what's going to make it or break it on the democracy, on the European accession. Finally, one recommendation. And I think Hannes Svoboda has just left. The new party leaders and those particularly who come into power need a buddy system. Massimo, go and speak to Zoran Milanovic and tell him, if you've got a problem, call me at midnight. Because we have so much knowledge that actually doesn't come through in these circumstances. And I would really plea for a buddy system whereby we can have peer-to-peer and we can learn from each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dasha. Thank you very much for the recommendation and also to the call to this kind of peer-to-peer system of giving consultancy to new leaders coming up in the region.